you have Ableton's sampler instrument, you have access to a granular style playback engine, at the very least a fairly rudimentary one, which is useful for soundscapes and effects. I'll go over an implementation of it quickly as it illustrates some pretty practical uses of a lot of the things that we've talked about in this course. Modulations on modulations, macro assignment, creative use of mod sources, etc. It also shows a basic way to hack an instrument, as in a way of getting an instrument to do something that it wasn't necessarily intended to do. So let's have a look at sampler to start with. I've got a simple bar of a PWM wave playing back as audio here. So right now it's playing back the sample as a one-shot, but let's put it into loop mode. Now the whole sample will repeat. If we take the loop and shorten it up, we can hear a rapid repetition with a similar effect to what we get from a granular engine with a very short grain size. So let's add a little bit of crossfading to smooth it out. In order to do this, we're going to have to bump the sample start point back from 0 a little bit so that the crossfade actually has something to work with. So now we've got a nice little loop. But how do we vary it or scan it up and down the wave? LFOs 2 and 3 have an option to send their output to the loop start, which allows the looped portion of the wave to scan up and down according to the LFO rate and amount. What I really want to be able to do here, though, is I want to be able to map a macro knob to the loop start. Now, that isn't something that's mappable, but there is a way to do it, and it requires a creative use of the auxiliary envelope. So if we activate the auxiliary envelope and map it to the loop start, we can use it to modulate the position of the loop within the sample. By removing the attack, shortening the decay, and removing the peak, we can now adjust where the loop is in the sample by adjusting the value of the sustain setting. So this sustain amount can be mapped to a macro knob within an instrument rack, which allows us to move the loop through the sample. In addition, mapping an LFO to the loop start and adding a tiny bit of modulation allows us to create a more natural sound as it creates tiny variations of the harmonic content of the looped audio. And it's a great time to use a sample and hold modulation source. Other cool modulation uses are taking an LFO and mapping it to the loop length, which can create anything from subtle variations to massive sweeps. So the output of a sampler setup like this benefits from being doubled up and tuned an octave apart, and then being put through some spatial effects like chorus and delay. Ableton Sampler is a great tool to work with on the microsound scale. Under the hood, its modulation mappings allow for some pretty intricate programming, and I highly encourage trying this technique out on different types of samples, vocals, drums, etc., as they all yield very, very different results.